Imagine you are standing in like a world-class art gallery,
Okay.
and you are staring at this breathtaking, one-of-a-kind masterpiece. It's beautiful, it's tragic. It has basically consumed your thoughts for years.
Right. You're completely invested in it.
Exactly. And then, right in front of your eyes, the artist casually walks into the room, picks up a rag soaked in turpentine, and without a single word, just wipes the canvas completely blank.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No explanation, no apology, just, gone. You wouldn't just walk out of that gallery and go get lunch, right? You would be totally paralyzed.
You'd be standing there demanding to know why they did it.
Exactly. And that absolute stun paralysis is exactly what millions of people experienced watching the series finale of DTF St. Louis last April.
It really was a collective shock.
It was. So we've been poring over a massive stack of source material for this deep dive. We're talking everything from sweeping viral video essays to highly academic, peer-reviewed film critiques.
All trying to answer that one burning question.
Yes, the one question keeping the internet awake: why did Floyd erase his own drawing? Like, what does it actually mean? So, okay, let's unpack this, because certain television moments just stick in your brain. They demand to be analyzed, and this is without a doubt one of them.
What's fascinating here is how one single wordless action by Floyd has managed to completely bypass all the usual internet chatter.
Yeah, nobody's talking about plot holes.
Right. The cultural conversation isn't about cliffhangers. The sources we are looking at are arguing about the fundamental state of a character's soul in his final moments on screen.
Which is heavy stuff for a TV show finale.
It really is. And the critical consensus has essentially fractured into three distinct, highly debated psychological theories, and all of them lead up to that utterly radical directorial choice in the final 2 minutes.
Yeah, we definitely have to talk about those last 2 minutes later. But let's dive right into the first major interpretation.
The empowerment angle.
Right. A huge chunk of the video essays we reviewed frame this ending through the lens of empowerment. Or, I mean, at least as much empowerment as you can squeeze out of a profound tragedy.
They call it the rebellion of the Tabula Rasa, right? The blank slate.
Exactly. Now, keeping the show's entire run in mind, you have to look at how these critics deconstruct Floyd's identity. He is a man who has been completely defined by external forces.
He's an interpreter.
Yeah.
Literally, his fundamental function in the world is to be a vessel for other people's words.
Yeah, he's basically a human microphone.
And several of the academic journals hone in on that specific point. He is a conduit. He isn't supposed to have his own voice. He's supposed to flawlessly deliver the voices of others.
Right.
But the analysis goes, far beyond his profession. When the sources unpack his dynamic with Clark, they emphasize how Clark's heavy, suffocating expectations have practically mapped out Floyd's entire existence.
Clark was always pulling the strings.
Always. Floyd was dragged into this immense, overarching chaos, constantly reacting to crises he didn't start. He was fulfilling roles he never actually chose.
He's been continuously molded and reshaped and, frankly, consumed by other people's narratives.
He's essentially been this piece of clay that everyone else gets to sculpt.
So, following this line of thought, the drawing, this deeply personal, wholly original thing that Floyd actually created himself, represents his true, unedited image.
It's the real him.
Right, but even that image is in constant danger of being consumed by the world around him. So by erasing the drawing, he is deleting the absolute last image the world has of him.
He's taking it back.
He is intentionally choosing the blank slate. He's deciding he would rather be absolutely nothing than be the person everyone else has forced him to become.
It is the ultimate refusal to be owned.
Yeah.
When you dig into the psychological weight of agency, the stakes become incredibly clear here. Agency is that core human feeling of control over your own actions and their consequences.
Which Floyd has basically had zero of for years.
It's exactly. For someone who has experienced the kind of prolonged psychological manipulation that Floyd has, reclaiming agency is often the absolute first step toward basic survival.
Right.
But when your identity has been so thoroughly co-opted by others, an external image like that drawing doesn't just represent you. It becomes a liability.
It becomes a prison.
Yes. Leaving it behind means leaving a piece of yourself for others to interpret, to claim, to misunderstand.
To help visualize this, think about a really extreme, relatable, modern analogy. Have you ever felt so overwhelmed by the persona you've built online or the persona people expect from you that you just want to nuke your entire digital footprint?
Oh, for sure. Just delete everything.
You see people do this in real life. They don't just log off. They permanently delete the social media accounts, they scrub their photos, they completely untag themselves from everything.
They vanish.
Right. And it isn't necessarily because they hate themselves, it's because they despise the avatar that society is interacting with. Erasing that footprint is an act of taking back control.
It's like looking at the world and saying, if you aren't going to see the real me, you don't get to see me at all.
Exactly.
That is a highly accurate way to frame the mechanism at play here. Removing the image is a defiant assertion of autonomy. It is a boundary being drawn in the most permanent way possible.
So in this light, erasing the drawing is a victory.
It's a dark, stark victory, certainly, but it is Floyd finally dictating the terms of his own existence for the very first time.
Okay, but autonomy usually has a spark to it, you know? It has a fire. If he's just taking back control, why does the scene feel so unbelievably gut-wrenching to watch?
Because it's devastating.
Yeah, maybe it's not defiance we're seeing. Maybe it's an inward-facing devastation. Because if we strip away the anger at Clark and the chaos, we are left with a much heavier theory, one that dominates some of the most watched YouTube deep dives.
It is heavier because it fundamentally shifts the locus of control. We move from external oppression to internal collapse.
Right.
This second prominent theory centers entirely on the emotional core of the series, his relationship with Richard.
The one person who actually functioned as an anchor.
Precisely. The video essays point out that Richard is the singular figure Floyd loved and respected above all others. He was the safe harbor amidst the chaos.
Yeah, he was his rock.
And this theory posits that the drawing wasn't just some general representation of Floyd's autonomy. It was a highly specific symbol of his inner life, his vulnerability, and most importantly, his hope.
It was the absolute best part of him.
Exactly. But as the finale brings all the escalating conflicts to a head, Floyd realizes the catastrophic depth of his failure. He realizes he has deeply, perhaps irreparably, disappointed Richard.
And the heartbreak the critics highlight there is just suffocating. The argument is that erasing the drawing is Floyd's tragic acknowledgement that his personal hope is officially dead.
It's a total surrender.
It's an act of self-punishment. He is deliberately wiping away his own beautiful imprint on the world because he feels he has corrupted it by letting Richard down.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we really have to look at the clinical psychology of shame. The academic sources lean into this heavily.
Right. There's a big difference between guilt and shame.
A critical, devastating difference. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad.
Wow, yeah.
Guilt allows for a path to repair. You can apologize. You can actively try to fix the mistake. Shame, however, is annihilating. It makes you want to hide, to disappear on a cellular level.
Just erase yourself from the equation entirely.
When you experience absolute, toxic shame, you feel entirely unworthy of human connection. And you certainly feel unworthy of leaving any kind of legacy.
I hear that, but I have to play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
Because when reading through these essays, this is the part that always trips me up. If he loved Richard so profoundly and he felt this annihilating shame about disappointing him, why not leave the drawing for Richard?
As a peace offering.
Yeah. Why not leave it as an apology or a final goodbye? Why destroy the only beautiful thing he had left to offer the one person he actually cared about?
It's a completely rational question. But the mechanism of shame is inherently irrational.
Okay, fair.
When shame completely takes over the cognitive process, leaving the drawing behind actually feels like an insult. In Floyd's mind, his betrayal means he has irrevocably tainted the entire relationship.
He thinks he's ruined everything he touches.
Right. He no longer deserves to be remembered fondly. Leaving a beautiful piece of art behind would be a plea for forgiveness or understanding. But Floyd has already sentenced himself.
He believes he doesn't deserve the grace of forgiveness.
Exactly. He sentences himself to be completely forgotten. Because existing in Richard's memory, knowing that his existence caused Richard pain, is a torment he simply cannot endure. So he removes the art. He removes himself.
Wow, that changes the entire complexion of the scene. It's not a rebellion against the world. It's a self-imposed exile from existence.
It is. But you know, both of these concepts, we've explored the fiery defiance of the Tabula Rasa and the crushing self-punishment over Richard Paul. They require a massive leap of faith regarding Floyd's mental state.
What do you mean?
They both assume that Floyd still has a core identity intact in that final moment. They assume there is still a functioning self inside him, capable of feeling that anger or that shame.
Oh, that's a profound point. To feel a complex emotion like shame, you need an ego. You need an active sense of self to process the failure.
But what if we're giving Floyd too much credit? What if the tragedy here isn't that he's punishing himself, but that there is literally no self left to do the punishing?
Oh, man.
The trauma of the series hasn't just wounded his identity, it has completely eradicated it. And that brings us to the third interpretation, which is arguably the darkest.
This is the one heavily championed by the international film critics.
Yes, specifically the Danish critique we analyzed.
Right. They called it Den trøstesløse udgang, which translates roughly to the bleak exit. And bleak almost feels like an understatement when you read their argument.
It's terrifying.
This theory frames the final moments not as an emotional choice or a reaction to another character, but as a literal, terrifying deconstruction of the self.
The critique introduces this truly harrowing concept that Floyd has stolen himself out.
Stolen himself out.
Yes, it's a translation that implies a slow, agonizing process of depletion. Throughout the series, just to survive the sheer physical and psychological chaos he was subjected to, Floyd had to constantly spend parts of his soul.
Wow.
He traded fragments of his personality, his empathy, his core memories, just to successfully make it to the next day.
He basically used his own humanity as currency for survival.
Yes, and now that he has finally reached the end, now that the immediate threat is over and the dust has settled, well, the bank account is completely empty.
There is only a void.
He has no self left to return to. The trauma didn't just break him, it consumed him from the inside out.
Here's where it gets really interesting and terrifying, honestly. Let's think about how we usually visualize change or trauma in modern storytelling. Usually it's like a snake shedding its skin.
Right, a rebirth.
Yeah, it's a painful, raw process, but underneath there is a new, hardened version of the animal ready to grow and adapt. But the bleak exit theory argues that the mechanism here is totally different.
It's not a rebirth at all.
Not even close. It's more like imagine your phone battery. You're lost in the woods and you're watching the percentage drop. 10%, 5%, 1%. Finally, the phone dies.
The worst feeling.
Right. But usually if you try to turn it on, the screen flashes that little red empty battery icon. There's still a tiny hidden reserve of power just to tell you it's dead.
Just enough to say, hey, plug me in.
Exactly. What Floyd is experiencing is what happens when a phone has been dead in a drawer for 2 years. You press the power button and it is just dead glass.
Wow.
There isn't even enough underlying power left to show you the empty battery icon. There is simply nothing left to respond.
That is a chilling analogy. But it perfectly captures the creator's vision of trauma, according to these critics. The show is asking you to confront the ultimate hidden cost of surviving chaos.
Which audiences don't usually want to do.
Audiences generally love survival stories. We love the narrative of the resilient human spirit pushing through impossible odds and emerging scarred but victorious.
Yeah, the hero's journey.
But this theory asks a much more uncomfortable question. What happens when the absolute price of survival is your own humanity?
God, that's heavy.
The drawing was his last physical proof of existence. It was a relic of a man who used to be there. By deleting it, he isn't punishing himself for Richard, and he isn't rebelling against Clark.
He is just making his physical reality match his internal reality.
Exactly. The internal self has completely disappeared into the void, so he makes the external proof disappear too.
It's essentially just like tidying up the physical space before the lights go out.
In a profoundly tragic, systematic way, yes.
Well, talking about psychological emptiness in theory is one thing, but making an audience viscerally feel it while sitting on their couches requires a really radical cinematic trick.
It was a massive swing by the director.
Because it wasn't just what Floyd did that broke the internet, it was how the creator forced us to watch it. The execution of the scene is just as debated in these sources as the narrative itself.
The final 2 minutes of the episode are a masterclass in audience manipulation. We are talking about the climax of a massive, multi-year television event, and what does the director give us?
Absolute suffocating silence.
Complete silence, no dialogue, just stark white subtitles for ambient room sound and a total jarring absence of musical score.
It's agonizing to sit through. I mean, think about it. 2 minutes on television is an absolute eternity.
It feels like an hour.
Next time you're watching a show, pause it, set a timer on your phone for 2 minutes, and just stare at the screen. It is incredibly uncomfortable. And that discomfort was a highly calculated move.
Oh, absolutely.
The internet has been absolutely obsessed with analyzing this specific choice. By removing the music, the creator removes all emotional comfort for the viewer.
This raises an important question about how we fundamentally process fictional media. Modern television and film almost always coddle the viewer's cognitive processing.
They tell us how to feel.
Exactly. If a scene is tragic, the composer brings in the sweeping strings, signaling to your brain, okay, this is the designated time to feel sad. If a scene is triumphant, the horns swell.
It's like an emotional safety net.
The score acts as a neurological guide. It holds the audience's hand, telling them exactly how to safely process the synthetic emotions on screen.
But by stripping that score away entirely, there is no safety net. We are free-falling alongside Floyd. We are left staring at the exact same white canvas that Floyd created by erasing his art.
It's confronting.
The show outright refuses to give us easy answers or, a cathartic, tearful release. We don't get to cry a beautiful cinematic tear as a cello plays us out to the final credits.
No emotional release valve at all.
None. Instead, we are forced to endure the exact, terrible, total sensory isolation that Floyd is experiencing in that room. It traps us inside his mind.
It is the ultimate rejection of narrative hope. When you are sitting in that 2 minutes of stark silence, your brain is scrambling. You are confronted with your own internal noise.
You're just waiting for something to break the tension.
You are desperately searching for a resolution or a cue that the creator explicitly refuses to provide. The silence isn't just an absence of sound, it's an active, oppressive presence in the room with you.
It feels almost aggressive toward the viewer. So I want to ask you, the listener, to really imagine the discomfort of sitting in that scene. You've followed this character's brutal journey for years, and this is how you are left.
Just staring at a blank wall.
Yeah. And this brings up the final lingering debate from the stack of sources we analyzed. When you sit in that 2-minute silence, staring at the blank space where the drawing used to be, does this total sensory deprivation feel like Floyd finally finding a desperate, quiet peace? Or is it a tragic, terrible surrender to the void?
It acts as a brilliant psychological Rorschach test for the audience.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
If you believe in the Tabula Rasa rebellion theory, that sprawling silence might actually feel peaceful to you. The overwhelming noise of the world, the stifling demands of Clark, the chaotic, crushing responsibility of being an interpreter, it's all finally quiet.
He has successfully achieved the blank slate.
But if you lean toward the shame theory regarding Richard, or the terrifying bleak exit, that silence is the sound of a tomb shutting. It is the deafening roar of complete and total isolation.
And the fact that the show refuses to tie the narrative up in a neat little bow, the fact that it forces us to sit in that uncomfortable silence and make our own decision, that is exactly why this deep dive into DTF St. Louis is so necessary.
It's brilliant art.
It's why group chats are still blowing up about it weeks later. It's why film critics are writing massive treatises on a fictional character's soul.
The ambiguity isn't a mistake in the writing. It is the entire point of the exercise. It demands participation.
So to bring this all together, we've gone on quite the emotional journey through these sources today. We started by looking at Floyd's final action through the lens of the Tabula Rasa.
Right, that empowering but incredibly stark rebellion where he intentionally destroys his own image to avoid being owned by a world that just used him.
Then we waded into the agonizing waters of the second theory, where erasing the drawing was an act of profound self-punishment. A man who felt he so deeply failed Richard that he no longer deserved to leave a beautiful legacy behind.
And finally, we confronted the terrifying emptiness of the bleak exit. The critical idea that trauma has entirely consumed his core identity, leaving a man who has stolen himself out until there was absolutely nothing left to leave behind.
All of this culminating in those final, deafening 2 minutes of silence that forced the audience to experience his profound isolation firsthand.
That's a lot to process.
It really is. So what does this all mean? Honestly, it means that how you personally interpret Floyd's final act, whether you see it as a hard-won piece or a tragic surrender, probably reveals a lot more about your own worldview, your own optimism or pessimism, than it does about the show itself.
A masterpiece always holds up a mirror to the observer.
It really does. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final, completely new angle to mull over based on everything we've unpacked.
I like this.
We've spent this whole time talking about erasure, about destruction, about the terrifying nature of the void. We talked at the very beginning about standing in an art gallery, watching an artist wipe a canvas completely white.
Right?
But let's think about what a blank canvas actually represents in its purest form. If Floyd erasing the drawing leaves a perfectly blank canvas, doesn't a blank canvas technically represent the potential for absolutely anything to be created?
A fresh start.
Exactly. Is it possible that after being weighed down by so much trauma, so many external expectations, and so much perceived failure, reducing himself to absolute zero was the only conceivable way Floyd could ever truly begin a new life?
That's a beautiful way to look at it.
Just something to think about the next time you find yourself staring at a blank screen.
A fascinating and slightly more hopeful thought to leave on.
Thank you so much for exploring the void with us today. Keep questioning the media you consume, keep looking for the hidden layers, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.